This is the Bitcoin Made Simple podcast. Here's your host, Corey Tusik.
Hey everyone, I'm Corey Tusik and welcome to the Bitcoin Made Simple podcast. If you are new to Bitcoin like me or have been around for years, my goal is to help educate you as I educate myself by interviewing people all around the Bitcoin world. Today on the show, I interviewed Daniel Prince, host of the Once Bitten podcast. I asked Daniel a bunch of questions and asked him to explain Bitcoin to me like I was a 5-year-old. I think you'll enjoy his answer. We also get into what was the catalyst for Bitcoin and many other things. I hope you enjoy the show, and thanks for listening. Daniel, appreciate you coming on. I reached out to Daniel because I had been listening to his Once Bitten podcast and was learning a lot, and I wanted to start my own and kind of navigate this world. And he's been very helpful. And as is with tradition, I think his daughter Lauren is here with a question.
Yeah, my question is, why did you decide to start a podcast?
Well, I started getting into Bitcoin as the pandemic was going on, and I was learning as much as I could about it. And I realized that probably the best way to do it, to learn about it, would be to just start a podcast and ask people as many dumb questions as I possibly could about it. Like the simplest things, like what is a wallet? How do I get it? How do I get my Bitcoin into a wallet? Simple things like that. And I mean, I've heard, it's been said before, the best way to research a subject is to write a book about it. And I work in the film industry, so I found that the best way to research a subject is to make a film about it. So while I have some stuff in the Bitcoin world going on there, the most immediate way for me to get information and start learning was to do a podcast, because it's something that you can do, every week. You can get new information. As things change. Just a week ago, Elon Musk came in and joined the world of Bitcoin. So yeah, I figured it was the best way to learn. I didn't want to stop learning. And then also, I feel like there's a lot of people, like this podcast is aimed towards kind of be a little bit of a stepping stone for people to then get to, like your father's podcast. If they listen to other Bitcoin podcasts, they'll enjoy this one, I would like to think. But, if somebody's new to this space and they're kind of afraid of like all the terminology and everything, I'm not afraid to ask the very stupid questions. Let me ask you,
Okay.
Do you have another question?
Cool. I don't think so, but do you have one?
I was going to ask you, what do you think about Bitcoin? What is your understanding of it?
Well, at the start, I thought it was a very boring math thing. But when Daddy explained it, I was like, oh, I can help you in the future. I mean, like, if a poor person had a bit of money and had a phone and bought a bit of Bitcoin, and every month it gets higher, then in a year they'll be richer than anyone else. And I just thought that was amazing, because you started off like that to being the richest person in the world.
And I'm sure you've seen before, with you guys travel a lot, I know, with your dad's book, so you've seen how they exchange money. And I think that's just hilarious to me, that you exchange this paper money and somebody's taking a fee, when in reality, we can just send it to each other at any point.
Yeah, I think that's cool.
Awesome. Well, thanks for your question.
That was a good answer, by the way. I'm impressed.
He's been listening, I guess.
Yeah, I hope so. If not to me, at least to some of the guests.
Like
the guests,
Uncle Chad.
Uncle Chad, yeah. You listened to Uncle Chad and Uncle Jeff as well when he was on, yeah?
And Uncle Badders.
And Uncle Badders, yes. Big shout out to Out Hodler Than Thou, Sir Badminton of Bitcoin. Yes, who we actually get to meet from time to time in real life. So we can actually touch Uncle Badders and his wife and their son and their dogs and have fun with those guys, can't we?
Yeah.
Real fun,
Awesome.
not just virtual.
Not just virtual fun. Well, so you
Yeah.
guys are you on major lockdown still, or?
No, but like it doesn't feel any difference if we are on lockdown for me.
Our movements are restricted. We are not in any major lockdown at the moment. We're not supposed to have the freedoms that we were born with, of course, and we're supposed to be in our houses by 6 p.m. and no bars, no restaurants, no cafes, nothing like that is allowed to be open.
I miss the pastries.
Well, we can still get the pastries.
I know, but I miss the coffees and pastries.
The experience, the lifestyle. This is what has been eroded away from humanity. Like quality of life, right? Quality of life. You can look at, if you were to overlay a graph of COVID cases, and we've all seen one of these graphs, and they just like seem to hockey stick and go up. And but then if you were to look at a graph, overlay people's quality of life, you just see that nosediving. And at the end of the day, what are we here for?
Yeah.
It's a quality of life, and being shackled in our homes for the, in air quotes, greater good is just such nonsense. But to Lauren's point, yes, we can still get the croissant or the pain au chocolat and things like that, because they're essential businesses, right? The bakeries, by right, because it's they're doing God's work by baking a baguette in France.
Can't shut down the
but
baguette.
we miss that lifestyle option. The reason we live here is because we love the rolling countryside and the slower pace of life, and rocking up to a cafe and having a coffee, or maybe you'll have a hot chocolate or something,
in the winter, hot chocolate,
and a warm croissant, and you just hear the chitter chatter in the background of a French cafe.
Tweeting.
Yeah, no, we that's what the world is being robbed of. There'll be equivalent experiences for people in other countries that it's just gone, and culturally as well. The cafe that we used to like visiting,
like before school, like we go there for like a little drink and like pastries if they're there.
But it would take you 3 or 4 minutes to sit down, mate. You'd have to walk in, and I would have to shake every man's hand and faire le bise, double kiss each woman in the cafe, complete strangers.
Yep.
And then the cafe owner, you would go up and present yourself, and you would faire le bise with her.
But we know her. So.
But we know her, yes. And then we could take our table if there was one available.
Yeah.
And then they would come and take your order, where in her own good time, when she was finished, pattering around with the others. And now, no one, not even the French people, they barely look at each other. You can just about maybe get a fist bump out of someone, or they do this elbow touch.
Yeah.
And this whole kissing culture has gone. And then, people listening to this might just find that pretty strange anyway. But in Europe, this is such a huge part of their culture. In Spain, in Belgium, in Holland. In Holland, it's 3 kisses.
Italy.
Italy, exactly the same. It's in France and Holland, in fact, males kiss each other. Those that are, if you know a man well enough and you call each other friends, or if you're related, then you kiss.
Yeah.
You do the double, side of each cheek. And in Holland, you do that 3 times. And what's going on? Like what we're undoing millennia of cultural heritage.
Yep.
Because
just because we are afraid of something that, don't get me wrong, I think it's a real virus, and obviously it makes people sick. But I love the meme that went around that said, imagine a virus so bad that you'd have to get tested to find out you have it.
Right.
It's like, it's not like, oh my God, there's that person falling down, you know, and yeah, I mean, I'm right there with you, because like what kills me is the dehumanization of people,
Mhm.
you know, covering up their faces, and all that kind of stuff. And I pray to God that it all comes back. Um, but when this started, you know, the initial 2 weeks to slow the spread, I told my wife, I said, I'm 100% behind that. I get that logic. Let's do that. I said, but my fear is that they will never let that power up. They will never let go. And unfortunately, here we are. What do we? 48 weeks into 2 weeks to slow the spread.
Right.
You know, and it's madness. And those of you
What's the
listening,
quote?
this
There's
is a Bitcoin podcast, but I think there's a lot of Bitcoiners that kind of feel this vibe of
oh yeah.
like,
Well,
you know, what's happening to our world, and like the dehumanization. The first time our 5-year-old put a mask on, like my wife and I both had to hold back tears. You know, it was like, I don't know what it was about seeing our little 5-year-old just be dehumanized with a mask, where it's just like oh my God. You know, and to me, it goes to, you know, one of the issues we have with like internet bullying and all those things is the lack of empathy we have for people. You know, for example, like for young kids, you know, like Lauren and my sons, like if you say something, like naturally something will come out of you that's mean, like, and you don't know it, you know, or you maybe just, you're kind of a kid, you're learning, you're testing the waters of what is nice and what's not nice. And if you say something mean to someone to their face, you know, they react poorly. You see that it hurt them. And so you have empathy and you go, that didn't feel good. Like that didn't feel good for me. It didn't feel good for them. And as the internet's taken over and people are bullying online, it just feels good to say something witty and smart and mean. And you don't get that feeling of the empathy. And that's kind of my fear with the mask mandates of having to wear masks forever, is that, you know, people are going to lose their empathy. And like you said, with the cultural aspect of, you know, of embracing people, giving kisses, things like that. I go at like film festivals around the world. I've had to do that, where I always have to figure out where they're from, because like there will be some kind of embrace that's not American, and I have to be prepared for it.
right.
So I'm like, okay, this company's in France, they're gonna do this, and like this one, you know, like the Chinese, like we bow, you know, stuff
Yep.
like that. And now I just feel like I don't know what the world's gonna be like when we go back to that. You know, are we going to embrace each other? I would like to think we will, but I don't know.
Get to a Bitcoin conference. I think everyone will be giving each other man hugs and
Oh yeah.
and shaking hands and yeah.
I can't wait to go to the party.
Yeah, Lauren wants to go to the 100K party, so that's.
But Daddy says if it's too soon, then we can't go because like flights will be cancelled.
Well, yeah, it all depends on whether or not we're allowed to fly out of the country. You know, you can't. Yeah, I can't magic a plane out of the sky. Well, maybe I can if Bitcoin's 100K.
Oh yeah, yeah. If Bitcoin's 100K, I think we'll all find a way to get across the ocean. Well, if you come to the 100K party, then I'll bring my kids. I have a 5-year-old and a 1-year-old, and that way you won't feel. You'll be able to show them the way of like how kids navigate this Bitcoin world. Because my son, my older one's familiar with the film business, but he asked me, as a kid would ask the other day, he said, "Daddy, what's a butt coin?" Because he's heard me talking about it so much lately. And I was like, that's really hard to explain right now. And that's kind of what I want to do with the podcast, of like, explain it to me like I'm 5, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I would actually like to get both of you to chime in on this. So Lauren kind of already did, but if you were to explain Bitcoin to someone like they're 5 years old, like what's the best way to kind of dumb it down where you're not missing anything, or at least the important points?
It's funny you ask this because do you want to hang around, or are you getting bored now?
I don't mind.
You don't mind? It's up to you. Yeah.
Yeah, I won't take offense.
Yeah. She usually hangs around for like what, 2 or 3 minutes? And you usually ask your question, then you go.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, anyway, Lauren and her
Brother, sister.
brother and one of her sisters, they do an online school called Galileo, GalileoXP.com. And one of your facilitators was running an entrepreneurial nano degree.
It's Junior Startup Club.
Junior Startup
and
Club,
like we make a business.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
And the class had been asking about money, and she'd been talking about money, and she asked me if I would come on and present to the kids. So there's a group around 9 years of age, 10, 11, and then there's a group like 13 and up. And so when I was talking to these guys, 8 or 9 or 10, I used the analogy of Pokemon cards, because that's something that they all know and they all love. And I was trying to explain to them, well, you guys, you use that as money, as a medium of exchange, right? If you think about, if you were in a playground situation now, or if you're in a social situation in your football team or whatever, a bunch of you got together, you'd all trade cards. Yes. So they understood that, understood medium of exchange. And something has, there's the fungibility aspect there as well, right? We all know that they are a Pokemon card, and they are all interchangeable. One Pokemon card is worth another Pokemon card. But then there's the special ones, the silver ones, or the GX, I think they're called. And if you were to use that card, you might be able to get 2 or maybe 3 of the normal cards in return. So then you have this kind of higher order, you might have an analogy of a $10 bill against a $20 bill. And then I said to them, well, what would happen if one of those silver cards that you had got and that you were keeping, what's the reason you're keeping it? Why aren't you swapping it? Because it's valuable. Okay, sure. So you've assigned some kind of value to it, which of course is subjective. To one kid that might be worth 2 cards, to another kid that might be worth 3 cards, to another it might be worth 4. So they all understood that as well. And then I said, well, what if the company, Pokemon, one night decided that one silver card that you're holding, they were going to print another 100,000 overnight and put those into the little packets and put them in the shops. And so now all of a sudden, lots more kids are going to have that same card. What would happen to your card? And one kid just straight away just said, well, it'll become less valuable. I'm like, right, okay. Yeah. So it's truly, it honestly is intuitive. Mm-hmm. I don't know at what stage we've had the wool pulled over our eyes. My generation, especially, with all of this financial engineering and derivatives and, mortgage-backed securities and CDCs. And I worked in financial markets. I can't explain 98% of any of these things to you.
And you lived it.
And yeah, right. And it's just it. And this is what I try and say to people that are coming to Bitcoin. First of all, it's like Bitcoin is intuition. Once you just start peeling back a few of those layers, it's just like click, 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 click. That just makes total sense. And so is Austrian economics, human action. That's like click, 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 click. That just all makes complete sense. Nothing we've been exposed to for the last, since 1971 for sure, perhaps even a little bit before that.
Yeah. That's it all starts to click, and that's what really blew my mind whenever I started to get into it.
I forgot. I took the analogy. The Bitcoiners amongst us will like this. I took the Pokemon analogy one step further, and I completely forgot this. But I like it. And I said to them, right, okay, so we've understood all of those aspects. What then would happen if one week one of your friends turned up and started like whispering around the whole of the group? He's like, hey, I've got something else. Hey, these cards, wait till you see these cards. Wait till you see these cards. It's going to be better. They're going to be much, much nicer, and they're going to be like way more valuable, and blah, blah, blah. And the next week he comes back and like he produces Jokermon cards. And I would say to them, so what would you do with those? They're like, well, nothing. They'd be worthless. I'm like, well, that's Ethereum. So you've just figured out a shit coin.
That's so funny because there's just with the right before the Elon thing last week, friends of mine who knew I was into Bitcoin started hitting me up like, hey, it was with the whole Wall Street bets thing was what got their attention on it. And I was like, yeah, you guys are going to want to get in as much as you can right now, do your research, all that kind of stuff. And they were like, immediately, I'm sure this is how most people, because even whenever I started to get into it, I started to look like, oh, what are these other coins? What's the value? And they were like, do you own any Ethereum? You should really, I heard like good things about that, And I was like, honestly, I own one Ethereum just for the hell of it. Like just because I can say I have one. I don't know why. Like it's the only thing other than Bitcoin that I have. But I just did it just because I was like, whatever, it's a little bit, it'll go up. It's not gonna, if it goes to zero, which it probably could, then it wouldn't affect me. I wouldn't care, but I just wanted to have some skin in the game so that whenever I criticize it, I can say, well, like I have money in there, so I know the critic, because like you said, the Jokermon, I don't understand how, like from what I understand of Ethereum, there's no cap, right? Like they don't have a cap, it's infinite, and it can, and there's a bunch of holes in the system too, right? Like there's a software problem.
That's about all you need to know. Like, those two things.
Like, why would you touch that? Until they, like, if they figured it out and made it better, then by all means, great. But I've been doing something like as I've been researching the documentary that we I've told you about, looking at other documentaries of the past and seeing where old Bitcoiners have ended up. Ones that were like really into it, like Roger Ver, is it Ver, whatever. Mm-hmm. He came up with then he split off with his Bitcoin Cash, and it's just sad to see where like the people that splinter off, kind of like they not only lose their momentum, but their conviction is so strong in what they came up with that they end up eventually being disillusioned with the whole crypto like community almost. And like the whole idea of crypto. There was a guy in San Francisco named Jared something that he had like a kind of like a hostel where people lived and worked on Bitcoin. And then I think he's like completely out of the game now, and like owns a brewery in Colombia, and like doesn't, he's like, oh, I have half a Bitcoin and I don't even care about it. And it's like, like you probably do like wish that you could go back and not lose all the ones that you lost and so forth. But that's a great explanation for Ethereum. And yeah, with the Austrian economics, what we're like, explain that to people, as far as, cause like me, I've heard it thrown around. But yeah, I mean, what's the theory behind that?
2 words, basically: free markets. And leaving the economy alone to discover its own prices and own interest rates for goods and services, which is something, again, we've never been privy to. We've always had the interest rates manipulated, and if you manipulate the interest rates, then you are distorting the price signals within the market. And that drives malinvestment in the wrong places. You have entrepreneurs going into businesses, starting businesses in places where they think they see value because the market price has been distorted. And of course, as it plays out over time, it could be, quick, 6 months, companies folded and finished and forgotten, right? Or it could be a year and a half, and then there's an even more spectacular crash because so much money, like venture capitalism or whatever else, has been pumped into it because this is the next big thing, this is the next black swan, and it all goes tits up. There's so many of these stories throughout the last several decades, but it's just it's getting worse and worse now as we have interest rates manipulated almost monthly and ridiculous amounts of money printing going on. So we do not have a free market. We have no idea the real price of a good or a service, and there's that's in complete contrast to what the Austrian economic theory is, where the less regulation, the better, and the better the economy will ultimately be.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Lauren?
I'm just gonna say I'm gonna go.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Thanks. It was nice meeting you.
Nice meeting you too. I hope you have a great podcast.
All right. Thanks.
Bye.
That's awesome. I'm glad. I really, it's one of the things I love about your podcast is having your kids come on, because it kind of shows like the new generation of like what they're growing up with online school. You talk about that with Michael Saylor and other people, but that concept would be lost on me if I was 10 years old and trying to understand how to take online school. It just wouldn't make sense to me. So I think that's going to make Bitcoin like so much more easy to adapt to the new generation as they come out.
Yeah.
And they start earning money and they go, well, why would I keep any of it in the bank?
And that's one thing, like, we grew up believing that we had to give our money to the bank, and we didn't even question it. It wasn't even a question. Like when I first started work, the first thing you had to do was provide your bank account details. So all of the money that you were expending your time and energy for went straight to the bank. And we never ever questioned, like, why is my money going to that business? And what are they doing with it? It was just this, given, like your money will go to that entity and they will look after it, in air quotes, and you will be thankful to them. If you're lucky, you'll get some kind of return on the money that you place there.
Like 0.5%.
Right. What did I see in those days? I was probably anywhere between 4.5% to 6.5%, maybe. Back in the mid. When did I joined I joined my first job in 1995. So on a current account, maybe anywhere in between there, like 6.5%, 7.5%. No, 5 to 7.5%. I don't know. Which sounds like a ridiculous amount right now.
Mm-hmm. But even then,
just,
if you could, one thing that I think a lot of people that are getting into Bitcoin, need to understand is what's going on with the banking. Like you said, like to trust that they have it. And something that what made me go, like when they printed money in March, I was like, okay, I need to buy Bitcoin. And then I saw the halving come up. I saw Pomp's tweet about Bitcoin halving. And I was like, well, what's this? And I looked like, okay, got into it a little bit more, and I discovered the quantitative easing. And then I realized that it's been a lie this whole time. Like I remember used to think that Fort Knox in the United States, like that had to be protected. In my mind, up until a couple of years ago, Fort Knox had to be protected in order, because if like other governments raided it, they would find out that we didn't have enough gold to cover all the dollars that were in the system. And like that's, I think, what the average person thinks if they have done any kind of studying. And then I started to learn. So can you extrapolate a little bit on like how the banks have been not just printing money with the Fed since the 2008 crisis, but when you loan them their money, like if there was a run on the banks, they don't have enough money to give out to everybody.
Yeah. And this is when I read Gigi's book, 21 Lessons, and he does a really good job. And I think he calls it fractional reserve madness. and it's just a short chapter introducing you to fractional reserve banking. And like the real overview is every time the bank takes in money, say you deposit in $10,000, they can multiply that by 10, fractionally reserve it, and then they will go out and loan against that. So this money's just like it is completely out of thin air, and
so they can loan that, and it comes
mm-hmm.
from nowhere. Like they don't have to go to the Fed and say, "Hey, can we loan X number of dollars?" They just inject that money. Like if you want the loan, they just put those digits into your bank account.
Yeah, and so if you were to put in $10,000, your interest rate, if you're lucky, might be 0.5 to 0.75%, whatever, let's say. But then they're loaning that out at like 1.5 or 2.5 or 3%, whatever they can get away with, right, on the other side. So they are making that difference.
And they're loaning out 100,000 on your 10,000.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And they're making a higher fee on it.
Yeah.
And when they get that money paid back to them, it's money that didn't exist in the first place.
Yep.
And all of a sudden now it's in the bank.
Then they loan it back out.
Loan it back out and loan it at a 10-to-1 ratio again.
Rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat.
I mean, honestly, learning that stuff is the scariest part of like, I'm sure you've seen the movie The Big Short.
Yep.
And whenever Steve Carell's sitting there talking to the CDO guy, they called the solid gold asshole. And in the moment that he realized, like the look on his face whenever they Ryan or what's his name, Gosling says, this is the moment. That's the look on his face whenever he realized that this was a ticking time bomb that was going to explode. Like that's kind of how I felt whenever I realized, like, oh my God, this is all fake. Like none of this is real, and I feel like for people, they're just getting into Bitcoin, they should really peel that back, because once you look behind the curtain and realize that the Wizard of Oz is just a guy standing there making it all up, it's one of those things that you can't unsee. And it's kind of been like reeling ever since, like of trying to figure out how this went wrong. I mean, so like, this was all building up, right? So this didn't just happen in 2008. They've been doing this lending, this fractal reserve lending, for years and years and years. And is that what drove inflation?
Yeah, I suppose so. Driving inflation is cheap money, right? That's what drives the inflation. The cheap money. People taking on like ridiculous loans. And where do those loans go? They go into like the housing market. Perfect example. And what happens to the housing market? It just goes berserk, like it did up to 2008. And you have this ridiculous set of circumstances where people, again, like to draw attention to The Big Short, where strippers had 2 or 3 condos. But the housing market just kept going up, and people are chasing it, and they can chase it with this free money that was just being thrown at people. And of course, we all know what happened. It just completely collapsed. So what's driving inflation now is all of this money printing. And as money gets printed out of thin air by the Fed, and by the way, have you gone down the rabbit hole of Robert Breedlove talks about this? I've not read it yet. I need to read it. The Jekyll Island book, The Creature of Jekyll Island.
No.
And it goes into, and this is one thing I had no idea of. Like, it's shameful to say that I always thought the Fed and like the Bank of England, for example, were part of the government. Like the Federal Reserve would be a government entity. Well,
Yeah.
it's not. It's a private entity with stakeholders, and nobody knows who the stakeholders are. No
Are
one
you
knows
serious?
who, for sure.
Oh my.
Breedlove opened my eyes to this. So, and they've never been audited, right? They're untouchable. So that's why I want to get my hands on the book, The Creature from Jekyll Island, where they go to Jekyll Island and they put all of this plan together and they create this company. They call it the Federal Reserve.
Because I mean,
there's
it
nothing-
sounds government.
Right? There's nothing federal about it, and they don't have any reserves.
It's just
But
a balance.
they have
sheet.
this monopolistic control over the world, really, because the US dollar is the global reserve currency. It's the global settlement currency.
And so these,
So every time they print money and make these policies, the ripple effects around the world are huge.
yeah, because so say they, devalue the dollar in the U.S., which they've been doing. How does that affect, Somalia and El
Mhm.
Salvador? I mean, does that affect them to a greater degree than it does the Americans?
Yeah, it could be in a whole different host of ways, because the global economy is this, like, there are a million moving little cogs. It's not just, unfortunately, guys, it's not just like black and white, push a button and everything's going to be fine. There are just so many millions of little intricacies. So if you devalue the US dollar, then that's going to affect import-export prices of certain goods. Well, all goods. And if you are a country that is exporting a good to the US, then all of a sudden you are going to be getting paid less in US dollars, and they might go shopping elsewhere. They might go to a different country to get that same good. So this is why you get into the currency wars. So if the US print, guess what's going to happen? The European Central Bank is going to print. The Bank of Japan is going to print. The People's Bank of China is going to print, because they're in this race to the bottom, and they're always trying to equal out this import-export, because there's these huge amounts of money, right? We're talking billions. And in the commodity markets, it could be oil, it could be soybeans, it could be corn, it could be sugar. A lot of these commodities, certain countries totally depend on, like they're completely held over the proverbial barrel by this central bank action. But it gets dressed up in the US as, oh, this is for the people. We have to do this to save the economy and to drive the economy. And if you're a US citizen, you're going to look at that and think, oh, that's great. That's brilliant. Thank God they're doing something, because I just need to get food on my table. And fair enough, you would think that. But at the end of the day, the ripple effects around the globe, it can be catastrophic. And Bitcoin fixes this, right? I know it's a meme, hashtag Bitcoin fixes this, but it does, because now nobody is completely reliant on that one exchange rate against the US dollar. It's just Bitcoin. If you've got some Bitcoin and you've got something over there and you are happy for me to send it to you, and we agree on the cost of that in Bitcoin, we can transact, and it can settle within 10 minutes to an hour, rather than 3 to 5 business working days via 2 to 3 other intermediaries through 1 or 2 or even 3 hops and currency exchanges as well.
That is such a real pain. I'm trying to get to work with Jack Mahler's company, Strike, just on a business end. If I can tie in, like, now that I'm starting a podcast, and I can get him to come on and do an interview, because on my business side, we're moving money around, and I just this week, it's like, anytime if there's a volume of over like 100K, it gets held up for like a week. and that's if it's going over. I forget if it's going to different. Anyways, I mean, so it's going all over the place, and everything is legit. Everything's by the book, but it's just the banks are like, well, hold on, let's wait. So when I hear people talk about like, oh, Bitcoin transactions can't happen that fast, I'm like, it settles itself every 10 minutes. Like that is, that to me seems good. So that's why I need to. This is my public address. I'm putting out a signal to get to Jack Mallers, because I will be a customer of Strike, and I could use their business literally right now. Like I'm looking to change payment systems,
right?
Because that's a real pain point for a lot of businesses.
Huge,
and
so big,
and there's so many fees that come out. Everybody takes their cut along the way. So yeah, and I guess,
and probably 2 to 3 screw ups per year as well, when money just goes missing.
Yeah.
I had this just 2 months ago. I was waiting on a US dollar payment to hit a bank account, and it didn't hit, and I was in touch with the lady that was organizing the whole thing, and she said, yeah, it left the HSBC account X amount of weeks ago. I'm like, well, can you double check? And I'll double check my side. My bank had no clue of this transaction. I'm like, as far as they are concerned, the transaction didn't happen. You're going to have to double check. So it took HSBC another 2 days until they finally came back and confirmed to her that they had made a mistake, and that they were and then that she had to put through the request again, a whole new request. And that would take another 3 to 5 business days. And you're just sitting there like, I'm a Bitcoiner, so I know the pain. And the reason I want that cash is so I can now move it to where I want it to be. And I'm trying to educate her at the same time. Like, this is why we are moving away from this, And she was the personal assistant of this guy I was doing business with. And she has this problem all the time. And with this specific bank.
It probably makes up 50% of her job.
Oh, God. Imagine that. So this is what we talk about, friction in the Bitcoin space. The friction here is so high. Just to make one transfer, it should be a click of a button. But the friction is so high. We are talking endless emails, endless phone calls, staying on the phone for however long whilst you're on hold, trying to get hold of that person. The fees, as you mentioned, because you have to make the currency exchange. So you're getting screwed on that exchange rate. It's nowhere near the spot market, what we call the spot market between banks, right? You're getting a retail foreign exchange rate. And they're taking a fee on top of that just for admin or whatever they want to call it, right? So
they can make a phone call.
Yeah. And they still fucked it all up.
Yeah.
And they don't care. Because instead of making it right, they just say, okay, it's a flick of a button. Here's that X amount back in your account. Now you're going to have to submit another request and go through all of that original friction that you went through in the first place. Now, if that was Bitcoin, she could have made that one payment. And if she had have chosen a high fee to get into the next block, that money would have been with me in 10 minutes and settled. Settled at point. It's not like, so this is a good point for people to understand if they're coming new to the space, because there's a lot of FUD around the speed of settlement, and Bitcoin is slow. Mm-hmm. And people look at, I can use my Visa, or I can use my Apple Pay, or I can use my Google Pay, whatever, and go and pay for whatever I want. Ping, pang, it's gone. Yes, to you, it's gone. But there is a certain amount of credit risk between the two parties that are holding that. So if you're using Apple Pay, for example, they might be backed by Visa, and Visa have then got to make that payment to Starbucks, and that won't get settled for 3 days. Right? That's not happening for 3 days. They'll add everything up over 3 days, and then if Starbucks took on the 26th of January, $4,500 in that specific location, that is not getting settled for the next 3 days. And then the same for the 27th of Jan, 3 days after that. It's a 3-day lag.
Yeah.
We feel as it's instant as the consumer, but it's not. Whereas Bitcoin, it's instant for everyone. You know,
and it can happen
10 minutes.
Within 10 minutes. And then like you said, you know, people were worried about using, you know, people were the fear, oh, I can't buy a Starbucks with it. Well, first of all, if that's what you really need it for, then, you know, keep a little bit of change in your debit card, and, you know, buy your Starbucks that way, and then every month cash out some of your whatever your reserve in Bitcoin and use it. But the Lightning Network, from what I understand, just completely solves all this. Like because what is it? Visa and MasterCard, how many transactions per second? They do like millions of transactions per second or something like that.
Goodness knows.
And then I think initially Bitcoin was something like 7,000. But the Lightning Network, I think, is like 10 times what Visa can do. And it's like instant. I saw in the initial thing that Strike put out was they had their one employee getting paid by the minute, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like just constantly sending money,
streaming money
from US to British pound instantly every minute. And I was like, that's the answer. Like that eliminates
for free as well, right? For
no
free.
Fee. No fee whatsoever. Which is like, you know, makes me wonder, like, are Visa and everybody sitting there going like, oh God, our days are numbered. You know, like they've got such a stranglehold on it, but there's really nothing they can do to put that back in the box. You know, once it's come out, it's out. You know, zero fees. They can't compete with that. All the intermediaries. You know, you mentioned how, like, if the bank screwed up, they go, oh, here's the digits in your bank account. You know, one of the things when I talk to people, you know, like my parents, for example, and they're like, well, this is a digital money. How can I trust it? You know, like, it's not physical money. And I was like, well, when was the last time you had $1,000 in cash? You know, it was like, how do you check your bank account? You go online. It's a digital currency system already. So, you know, could you speak to that, of like how what they do is essentially a made up version of Bitcoin? I don't know. Like, is that a bad way to put it? Like, where they just kind of like,
no,
it's like monopoly money, and they just inject it and put your money numbers in there.
This is why your generation, your millennial, I think, and the generation coming just behind you, you will understand that, especially. So the last time I was in London in January, before all of the madness hit, I was going around. I was doing some business meetings. I consult for startups, and I would meet teams, and I'd started to build relationships with some of these guys, and then, oh, Dan, I'll take you out for a coffee. I'm like, okay, yeah, sure, but don't worry, I'll get the coffee. It's all right. Yeah. I don't expect you to pay for my coffee. You know, I'm the older guy here. I've got a few gray hairs. I can afford. But they, you know, would absolutely insist. And I'm like, well, okay, absolutely. You know, it's very humbling. Thank you very much. Every single time they paid on their phone. Every single time. I didn't even see them take out a card. It was just straight on the phone. And I was like, holy shit. Right. Do you know anything about Bitcoin? No.
Know anything about it.
Well, when you do, when you do get that touch point, it's not going to seem dumb. It's not going to seem stupid. It's going to be like, oh yeah, it's just another wallet on my phone. Okay, I get it. Yeah. And it's digital currency. Okay, that seems a bit weird, but I guess this is already digital currency anyway. Excuse me, dropping my phone. So I for Lauren and my kids, it will just obviously being around me and talking about it. But even for kids their age, to your point, right at the beginning of this, kids their age, they're not going to question it. It's just going to be a thing. Mm-hmm. It's going to be, okay, yeah, my dad downloaded this wallet. Now I'm 12, now I'm 13. I can go to the shops by myself, and whatever else. And I've got a little bit of this on my phone, and I can use it at point of sale. There'll be a lightning point of sale, and I can go and buy my sweets, and I can go and buy my croissant, whatever down here, and it's €1.10 or however many satoshis, and it'll just be done. And they'll just flash the phone, and that will be all they know.
It's funny, like how you say everybody pays with their card. Like I can't tell you how many apps my wife and I have with like things preloaded. Starbucks, Chick-fil-A. Like if we can pay for Chick-fil-A with our phone, like why would it be so hard for us to think about paying for anything with our phone?
Yeah.
And so one of the things that really got me too, and I mentioned before, but like at Christmas time, Jeff Booth's book, The Price of Tomorrow.
Price of Tomorrow. Yeah.
I got that for Christmas, and my family were all looking at me like, "Oh my God, you got a book?" Because I never read. I'm a movie guy, and I said, "Yeah," I kind of explained it, and they're all talking. I'm like, "You've heard me talk about Bitcoin. They've obviously heard me mentioning it for the last year." And they're like, "Well, why is it valuable?" And I said, I was like, all the printing they did. I was like, how much do you think they printed in the last year of like the total dollars in existence? Nobody came close. I was like, 25% of the dollars that are in circulation right now were created after March of 2020. And like the looks on their faces were like, what? And I said, and that was the thing that got me to really, really start going with Bitcoin. But what threw it to the next level was hearing a lot of people, but Preston Pysh explaining quantitative easing, and I realizing that 75% of every dollar in circulation didn't exist before 2008. How do they hide that? Like, how is that not knowledge to the average person?
It's because when we're kept dumb, we're not taught this stuff, and there's a whole reason we're not taught this stuff. We're not even taught how to balance even write a check or balance double entry bookkeeping at all.
Yeah.
This should be elementary stuff. That this, like, if you as an education system are there to add value and educate free thinking individuals to enter into the marketplace, they got to know about money. But guess what? We don't. And there's a very, the reason we don't. You've come to that realization.
Because they're in control.
Yeah, they have the monopoly. They have that power. They get to create the education system. Free education is a human right as long as you sit down and learn what we decide to teach you. That curriculum gets made by unelected bureaucrats. Education ministers that are in that role. They never ever, they're just in a political role. They never ever wanted to be an education minister, likely never ever been a teacher before. But because one of their cronies and another one of their cronies and then another one of their cronies all got together, and the top crony has now got the job, he's now got to assign people some nice cussy jobs, and right, okay, you're now,
you're the
health minister, or
you're
the Ministry of Education or whatever. And this is why we have these shocking systems all around the world, whether it is a health system, whether it's an education system, these centrally controlled, centrally planned, malinvested, over-regulated, needless policies being made by people that are just trying to keep themselves relevant at the top.
Yeah.
And it's hurting all of us, plebs at the bottom.
Yeah.
But we're figuring it out. And, Bitcoin is the answer, because Bitcoin is this value proposition, this network, this beautifully designed, decentralized network with the Bitcoin token on top of it that we assign value to. No one else. We assign value to it. And no one can print any more of it. It's going to be 21 million. And right now there's 6.25 Bitcoin made, minted, mined into existence every 10 minutes. We know the issuance schedule up until 2140, almost the exact date in 2140 when the last Bitcoin is going to be mined or minted into existence. So we have this information. This is something we've never had before in our species. We've never settled upon a medium of exchange that is truly scarce, where everybody knows the rules, everybody is incentivized to follow the rules, and we know the issuance schedule out for over 100 years. It's mind-blowing.
Yeah.
There couldn't be.
It is one of the, it's one of those things that once it grabs hold of you, you can't stop. Now, do you know what happens? Because the mining rewards, for people that are new, the way I understand it is the computers are hashing out all of the transactions and coming to an agreement on the next block and solidifying that into the blockchain, which is basically the bank ledger that everyone in the world can see. Every time you mine a block, you're rewarded with 6.25 Bitcoin now, and then in 4 years, it'll cut down to 3.175, and so on. So the reward structure's there. One thing I am confused on is once all the Bitcoin are mined and you get to 21 million, what's the incentive for the miners to keep running?
That would be, this has been talked about, and the way I understand it would become a fee-based economy. So you would carry on mining to keep the blockchain. So basically, in essence, if you think about your bank might be audited every month or every quarter or whatever. And this is what opens up to so much of these mistakes that we were talking about earlier. The Bitcoin network is audited every 10 minutes by these miners around the world, thousands of them, decentralized, doing this work, auditing the blockchain every 10 minutes to make sure there is no double spend, to make sure there is no nefarious actors and someone trying to put in some fake Bitcoin. It all just gets completely, if anything like that were to happen, consensus would not be reached. The other miners and the other nodes within the network would disqualify that block. It would not be written onto the blockchain. So those ones that are correct and solved correctly and have all of the correct transactions and is agreed by the rest of the network, that gets written to the next block. That machine, whichever ASIC machine solved that, is rewarded with the 6.25 Bitcoin. So when we get to 2140, they also take the fees as well, whatever fees were in that block. So with each transaction, if I send a transaction to you, if I want it to be in the next 10 minutes, I would pay X amount of Satoshis to make that happen. If you said to me, Dan, it doesn't matter, put in a low fee, it might turn up to you in 3, 4, 6 hours. Who knows? Maybe earlier. Depends on how busy the network is. And that would cost me less Satoshi to send. Now, it's still very, very cheap in comparison to
fees.
Right, exactly. So people believe that over time, as mining reward goes down, fees will naturally go up. But nobody knows the answer. Nobody can tell the future. And there's new things coming out all the time, like Lightning, like we discussed. So if I'm moving a small amount of money across to you, and I don't want to pay high fees, and it's not a huge amount of cash, then we could probably just use Lightning and it would go immediately and it would be cheap, if not free.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then who come, would it be the consensus, would all the people running nodes have to come to an agreement on in 2140, so 120, 119 years from now, they're going to have a conference and sit down and say, all right, this is how the structure is going to go.
No, it'll be settled way before that. It will happen organically, and it will happen way long before that point. And
Maybe
it
this
might
is
even
what
happen.
pushed Elon to over the edge, because he has figured out how to live to that long. So he just wanted to make sure that it was going to outlive 2140,
And take it to Mars and have it beamed back and forth. Yeah, who knows?
which is that is fascinating. I couldn't believe that he wasn't into it earlier with his desire to colonize Mars. Um, and he said, I just think it was funny. I can't remember who I was talking to about it, but like how he said that he was going to make the laws on Mars, and everybody was like, whoa, no, you can't. And he was like, what do you mean? Like, why can't? Oh, who else is going to make them? Like, is the U.S. going to get there first? No, they're not. So yeah, that's crazy. So do you have? What do you think? Do you think it was the '08 financial crisis that made Satoshi bring this to the world? Because it's a complex system, so it had to have been worked on for a long time.
Decades before. There'd been. I can't credit exactly who and exactly what projects had come before, but people have been working on this since the 70s, I think. Trying to figure out a fairer way to exchange value with each other, a fairer banking system, and many had been before and failed. That there's, I can't remember, somebody's tweeted out the timeline of all these different projects, and it blows your mind actually. We all stand on the shoulder of giants, right? Saylor told me that once in our interview, and he's right. And of course, it's an old proverb, an old saying, and maybe Satoshi just tied all of these loose threads together, or maybe they all did it one night, 4, 5, 6 of them, smoking a bong and figured it all out. Who knows, right?
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of it. We never will know, hopefully. Although your documentary,
yeah. Oh yeah, that's my my big thing. I don't want because I don't want to know who Satoshi is, and I don't think we ever will. And one of my, there's theories I have behind who it is, but then one of the theories that when I thought about it, I was like, this really isn't the most far fetched. Would be that it was from the future. Like, it sounds crazy, but like what if in the future they figured out a way to communicate with the past just through technology? Not like they could appear here like Marty McFly and affect the past, but they could somehow send digital communications, that maybe they found the right perfect time to introduce the thing that could save humanity. Like, as crazy as that is, and people think like, oh, that's like, maximalist talk, and you're just a crazy Bitcoiner. But like, honestly, like, a fair system is what saves the world. You control what is it? You control the money, you control the people, or what's that quote? And then what's the Mark Twain quote? He said, if people really understood how banking worked, there'd be a revolt, like, by the next, like, open a business the next day. So yeah, I am fascinated to see. And so yeah, anyone that's listening, whenever you get to hear more about the Satoshi documentary, it's not doxing him, but I think my end goal would be to get him to communicate through a secure channel, just for the whole world, not just for me, but like, I think everybody would be fascinated to hear what Satoshi thinks of the current system. And I think, it picked a perfect time. It was October 31st, 2008. It came out right when everything was melting down. And yeah, and the banks haven't stopped printing since. So, what do you think it'll evolve to, let's say, in the next 5 years? Just thinking about all the things we've talked about in the payment system. I mean, a lot of people, the schisms in the past of, Roger Ver making Bitcoin Cash. His mission was to make a payment system. Do you think people that are getting into Bitcoin now should be looking at it as anything other than a store of value?
No, I think that's exactly what they need to be looking at it as, a store of value, as coming into it thinking, this money I have right now, this represents all of my hard work, all of my time, all of my effort, all of my sacrifices, and it's being eroded unfairly by bad actors that are just sitting atop this pile, lining their own pockets with their actions, and to the detriment of everybody else. And if you come in with that mindset of, this money represents my time and it represents my effort, and I value myself higher than anyone else, especially those that are making these ridiculous decisions, then I'm going to move this money into a fairer system and treat that as a savings account. I'm not going to speculate. There's nothing speculative about wanting to save your money, wanting to protect your money. There's nothing speculative about that. And that will take the speculation mindset out of it. Number go up is very, very good fun. We all have great time when that happens. Enjoy it, but don't be tempted to flip it back out for fiat. Michael Saylor, he famously analogized his $500 million worth of treasury cash as a giant melting ice cube. So if he's got a giant melting ice cube, we've got little bags of ice cubes, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't imagine ever wanting to buy back that bag of melting ice cubes you've once sold.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you're doing if you come into this mindset with, I'm going to buy in with fiat and I'm going to switch it out when it's higher just to get the fiat back. Because when you got the fiat back, what are you going to do with it? It's just more melting ice, because the system wouldn't have changed. It's the fiat system. That's not going to change. That will blow itself up. We don't need to do anything to that system. It's on self-destruct mode.
It's going to destroy itself.
Right. So whatever you're coming with, it's look at it as a vehicle to protect the wealth you have. Don't go crazy. Don't go all in. Go a little bit at a time and keep your job. You need your job, but take 25% of that, whatever it is per month, and put that in to Bitcoin. And change your lifestyle. There's so many stories of people giving up smoking or cutting down drinking or stopping gambling or cutting out drugs, and all of these, again, I'll use air quotes, lifestyle choices.
Mm-hmm.
They're not lifestyle choices. They are escapism choices. You're trying to escape. That's legacy bullshit. Mm-hmm. You get home, you've had a tough week. Friday night, what do? You sink into your bum dip on the sofa. You don't want the kids to say a word. You want your favorite TV show, or you want the game on, and you want a 6-pack of beers, and you want a pizza. That's fiat fucking life.
Mm-hmm.
That's shit. And that's driven because you have been on the hamster wheel that whole week. If you can start taking a little bit more control and you see your savings grow, if you see your savings grow, you'll see your life decisions change. And it's so powerful, and it's addictive, but it's a good addiction. And
because you're making healthier life decisions.
Absolutely.
So you wouldn't recommend what I did in just flipping everything over? Like I took retirement. I mean, I started off, I put money in, enough money to make myself feel the pain if it went down,
Right.
And as it fluctuated. I was like, okay, I have to have skin in the game to kind of get the flow here. And then it was whenever I discovered the quantitative easing and everything that had been happening, And basically, correct me if I'm wrong, but the way I explain this to people that are new to it is that, like, them printing money, increasing the supply, is devaluing your cash that you save in the bank. So, say you have money sitting in the bank, in 5 years, it'll basically have lost 20% of its value, or something like that. Whereas if you converted that all to Bitcoin, in the short term, it might fluctuate up and down, up and down, up and down. But over the long term, if you pull back the scope, it just goes up with little bumps along the way. But so that's what I guess I would agree to other people to put enough in where you're going to feel the burn, and you're also going to feel the excitement, but you can afford it. You can afford to lose that. And then I think that was whenever it fully clicked for me, I went all in. I mean, the QE moment was like, oh my god. And and it was like I felt like I was going to go around my house like selling items.
Yeah. Sell your chairs.
Yeah, I was like, what else can we sell? Like, I was like 401k, see ya. Like, Fidelity, buy.
Yep.
Everything, boom, boom, put it over there. And I mean, obviously, like, I'm in as far as a Bitcoin world goes, like, I haven't suffered a huge correction yet. What did we have recently? Like a 25% drop or something.
Well, if you take the all-time high of 2017, 19 and change, it wasn't quite the 20,000. It was 19 and something. And then what did we bottom out in March here in 2020 was just around 4 and change, wasn't it? A little bit over $4,000, I think.
So there's a 75%.
Did we even go look? Oh man, yeah, it's that's character building. But at the same time, if you're doing that weekly or even daily, the dollar cost average, every time you put a little bit of fiat into that system, as the price is going down, you're getting more satoshis.
Mm-hmm. That was another like bell ringer moment for me when I initially, because I did the stupid thing that I would recommend nobody do, with thinking that you could trade. And I only did a couple trades where I was like, okay, I think it's going to go down, so I'm going to pull out and then buy when it gets lower. And I'm lucky that I didn't get burned, but I also didn't end up as good as I could, because it's impossible to predict. And I started to take everyone's advice that all the Bitcoiners were saying, just hodl, stack your sats, all that kind of stuff. But it changed in my mind where I was like, ooh, I want the extra Bitcoin. I don't want more dollars. I want more Bitcoin. So like the price of the actual Bitcoin didn't matter to me. What mattered to me was seeing that number of Bitcoin go up. And then once I kind of realized that, I was like, well, why would I trade and risk losing that Bitcoin when I could just buy more, and go that route. So yeah, I would recommend nobody doing it. And one last question I do have on a technical side, and there's probably other people I can ask this to as well, but for people getting into it and people like me, what's your simplest way to explain a wallet? You told me about the Cold Card or different wallets out there. Like, how do I know that the Bitcoin are in there?
This is a very difficult. Unfortunately, a wallet is a bad description of what it is, because we have this preconceived notion of a wallet is something we put our money in and holds our money. What the actual wallet is think of it as a key to the safety deposit box. And if you think about the blockchain, it's made up of 1 megabit blocks. We're up to block height 688,000, whatever it is right now. I don't have Bitbo up, wherever we are. And in one of these blocks is going to be some of your transactions, right? That will be some of the Bitcoin that you bought that are assigned to that address that got assigned to that block. Now, your hardware wallet is the key to access the blockchain to find that address that belongs to that wallet. So the Bitcoin, this is where people kind of glaze over a little bit. The Bitcoin always sit on the blockchain. They're not actually in your wallet, and they have their own unique address, and your wallet holds the keys to go dip in to that specific safety deposit box, if you like, if you want to use that analogy, on the blockchain, and access the that transaction.
So the Bitcoin always sit there, but you having a hardware wallet is basically the GPS instructions to find that safety deposit box.
That's a good analogy as well. Yes.
With a key as well, like with the key for that door. So nobody can find it and nobody can unlock it if you don't have that hardware wallet.
Yep.
Okay. That makes me feel a lot better, because one thing, I was like, well, I have this hardware wallet. Like, is there a button I can press on it that shows like an LED screen that says like, 4 Bitcoin in here? Like, oh, great. Like it's because like whenever it's in your, like Coinbase or like your digital wallet, you can look at it and go like, oh, okay, that's how much it is. That's cool. But
so the wallet will still do that. It will still tell you exactly how many transactions you have, how many in quotes coins you have on it. It will give you all of that information.
The hardware wallet will?
Yeah, absolutely.
So
whether you're using a
computer or
it will tell you everything you need to know. It's just like looking at a bank account. It will tell you that.
Okay.
It just gives you that extra. It is now yours. It's not Coinbase's. It's not the other exchange or the other app that you're using. So if you're using Coinbase, for example, it's giving you that information, but that is via their own hardware wallet or their own system, whatever they're using to access the blockchain.
Okay.
So once you take it away from them, that is now yours. There'll be another transaction away from that exchange. So that will move from block 483,000, whatever, and we'll go into the next 1 or 2 blocks, which your hardware wallet will be the only one that can access. So that's what we talk about taking, not your keys, not your coin, taking coins off the exchange. That's the exact thing that you're doing.
Is remove it. So if you have it on the exchange, then Coinbase or Kraken, any of those exchanges,
it's theirs.
They own.
It's theirs. It's the same as you giving your money to a bank. Now, if you get paid every month, that money's not yours. It's the bank's, right? It doesn't actually touch you. It goes straight to the bank, and we think it's ours because we have the nice little plastic card that we can go and withdraw at the ATM. But we can't take whatever we want whenever we want, right? We will have to go in and make an appointment with the bank manager to get our money and whatever else. It's the same kind of thing if you're trusting a third party, such as Coinbase. We will keep using that as an example.
We can use Kraken too, because Coinbase went down for like 5 minutes today. So that's
So that's another problem with Coinbase. They're going down all the time. This is not acceptable. This is not an acceptable term or condition for a Bitcoiner. A Bitcoiner wants self-sovereignty. So we can use Kraken, we can use any exchange, any
just
service,
to get the
any
Bitcoin.
app. So important that you take that Bitcoin into your own custody, and you do that with a cold card or with a Trezor.
And like you said, too, recommended like do an initial amount, like $5 worth, just to make sure it works.
Yeah, absolutely.
That way you're not like just shipping tons of Bitcoin off and like, oops, wrong wallet.
No. Because the first time you do this, it's a hair-raising moment. Your palms will go sweaty, even though it might just be like a $5 amount or whatever. You'll be like, what the hell's going on? This is just all so weird. And is it going to work? And what if it doesn't work? But it'll work. Don't worry. It'll work.
Did you ever mine?
No, I first started learning, in earnest learning. I'd heard about it before, but I started in earnest learning and seeking out interviews in 2014 and trying to educate myself a bit more. So by that time, the home mining ship had sailed anyway. But and we were traveling as well. So we were on the road for 2.5 years.
Yeah, you
There's
can't
nowhere
carry
in the
mines
world
around with you.
That's
But it is so tempting, you know. People are like I see, I'm like, ooh, like what if you bought an ASIC, you know, or like
no, don't do it.
That's what
that ship has sailed. That is now a very that's a business that is a real business undertaking. You know, that you're not just buying one ASIC and plugging it in at home. That's just nothing but a waste of money.
That's never going to earn the Bitcoin, right? I mean, because like you have to be the one computer out of how many that are running that gets credited for solving the block. You know, so how often are you going to do that? Like with one? Yeah, a lot of people I want to caution, you know, that are getting into it, because immediately that was another thing that some of my friends started saying, were like they were bringing up like that Pi cryptocurrency that you can mine on your phone apparently.
Oh god.
And you know, and
Don't
they
do
were
it.
like, and they were like, there's ways to mine here. What's the reason to not do Pi? Because I didn't even look into it, but is it like a dangerous thing to get involved in?
I've not looked into it, but I know it's a scam. It'll just be some scammy bullshit. My brothers were sending it to me. I had to explode at them on a voice message. Like, you know, what the hell are you doing? Take this shit off your phones. And, you know, now another one's turned up that I don't know. I got something, someone texted me something the other day. Oh, if you do this and if you sign up and you use my sign up, you'll get one whatever token. I'm like, just stop sending me this shit. You know, it's to
me that
it comes back.
Go ahead.
It comes back to the Jokermon thing. All of these shit coins, and they are shit coins. You know, you don't reinvent the wheel, right? What Satoshi did, you don't double solve the double spend problem. You don't double solve the Byzantine generals problem. You know, this was a one-shot deal. That's done. That's solved. We have this network, globally decentralized. The whole thing is like, you know, beyond. It's the best. Many people have said the best invention ever, best feat of engineering. Some people have said all of that kind of stuff still goes over my head because I'm not, you know, that side of my brain doesn't engage with that kind of stuff. But I understand that whatever's coming after it is exactly the same, with just a few little bells and whistles on top that people are trying to pick holes in what's already available. You know, like Bitcoin Cash is a perfect example. Oh, it's quicker. All right, we don't give a fuck. What we want was what we had. If you want to go and do it all quicker over there, that's fine. You go for it. But we are not coming with. And, you know, the market decided, this is, again, back to Austrian economics, right? What people are drawn to, what draws people to Bitcoin is this free market. It's like, you know, let the market decide. Okay, the market decided we all want to stick with the original blockchain, with the original Bitcoin. Go and make your Bitcoin Cash. Go and make your Bitcoin Satoshi Vision. Go and make your Ethereum. Go and make your, you know, Monero, Zcash, IOTA, all, you know, name them. That there are thousands and thousands and thousands of them.
I feel like everybody that does that wanted to be Satoshi.
Right.
Like, you know, they really liked it, but they wanted to show that they're smarter than him somehow. You know, like, oh, look at this thing that I created that's better.
And a huge amount of hubris behind it, because they wanted to build a crypto company, and, you know, as a big, you know, like Silicon Valley, right? You want to be the next Black Swan. You want to be the next Uber or the next Twitter or whatever. And so when cryptocurrency came along and this blockchain, this thing called Bitcoin came along, people were like, oh my God, we can build on top of that and I can be the next Black Swan. It's legacy thinking, you know. But what what they weren't prepared for, what they didn't understand was this is something like completely different. This is redefining.
It's perfection.
This is a whole new paradigm. And sure, you can build on top of it, but not competing services like Lightning builds on top of it, alongside it, is, symbiotic with it. It's not a competitor.
Yeah. There's only going to be one, and when people go, they talk about use cases or whatever, I'm like, okay, well, obviously, I mean, Ethereum's worth what, $1,500, something like that. That's great.
When's the 100K party?
Yeah, exactly.
Right? It ain't happening ever.
It's like, who's the king? You know what I mean? Like we all know who the king is.
Right.
So you're never gonna take the king down, and it's not because of branding or anything else. It's because mathematically, I mean, my dad was a CPA, and he always has said the whole world is math. He's been saying that ever since I was a little kid. The whole world is math. Everything around you is math, and and I like, I'm not an engineer, so I can't dig into it to the level that an engineer could, but from everything I've studied about it, it's a flawlessly made system that obviously took.
You'll have to show him Knut and Lonnie Appleberg's video with Guy Swan, and Knut's brilliant quote. Everything that ever was divided by 21 million, and so it's like infinity. The formula is infinity sign over 21 million. And that's basically what Bitcoin is. We came for number go up, but stayed for number go down. And that's like, when that hits you, you're like, that's a mind blower. Because
you mean number go down as far as how much money, or
any good or service or product that you ever want to buy in the future is going to go down in value, priced in Bitcoin terms. And you're like, oh my God, not only am I saving my time, my energy, my wealth, not only is that going up, dollar denominated, pound or euro denominated, whatever you want, but everything else therefore is going down. Like the price of that house I want is going down in Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
Because right now that might cost me, let's say, what are we, 38,000. A house is 380,000. That's going to cost me 10 Bitcoin.
If you wait a year, it might cost you 3 Bitcoin.
Right? So we came for number go up, stayed for number go down, because when you make that realization, you're like, holy shit.
Yeah.
It's just a massive truth bomb. And
it is like, and it makes me, not like rethink everything I'm doing, but like, so in the film business, you sit there and you go, like, what's the most likely thing that I can get a 10x return on, and honestly, I've been looking at it going like, like probably the best thing I could do in the next like year would be to put all of our money into Bitcoin, and that'll do better than, well, first of all, we can't shoot movies because it's lockdown, but then starting to look at it like from an investment standpoint, like I had this thought of creating a fund where, like, say it costs X number of dollars to make a film, and people could invest in Bitcoin, and whenever the Bitcoin total raised equals US dollars that we need, then so say I mean, just for simple terms, like it's $1 million budget, and somebody puts in $100,000 worth of Bitcoin, and it goes up 10x. Then right then and there we go into production, and that person all of a sudden has a production. But all those things, every time I think of something like that, I'm like, well, why wouldn't that person just hold on to their Bitcoin?
Right.
Why would they spend it on anything stupid?
This will come though. This will come. This will come. This will come in like 5, 6, or 7 years time, because those people that are holding a significant amount of Bitcoin, they don't want the melting ice cubes back. They're not going to sell it out for fiat, but they will be looking to fund projects and get a return on their collateral, and they will be looking to finance deals and get a return on their collateral. And this is where it's going to head. And it could be the case where you could loan someone that Bitcoin, and they might use half of it to put into fiat to buy the equipment and whatever else they needed to get the project going. And by the time the project's finished, like if the price is 10x,
then they're going to be back in the hole.
You're going to be the person that's loaned you the Bitcoin. They're going to get back their Bitcoin and profit and be part of, be credited for a project, or even have an asset to go and market. So it changes everything.
I think that as long as they're going to keep inflating assets and pushing money into the system, I'm keeping an eye on it, because I think a good business strategy would be to just use all the collateral in Bitcoin to start buying, with these cheap rates for, loans, buying assets that are going to inflate in crazy amounts, like a lot of properties, different things like that. That like, it's insane to me to think about that. Like you buy a vacation home or something, say it's a $500,000 vacation home, use it for rental income, and like the bank agrees that you for the next 30 years get to pay on it as if it's only 500,000, even though they're going to inflate it away. So by the time you're done paying it, that it's worth 2 million. And meanwhile, take all that money and put it, instead of buying put 20% down and take the 80%, put it in Bitcoin, and that's going to explode. So that by the time, in 10 years, you'll be like, wow, I'm glad I put that 80% in Bitcoin instead of, just buying the asset. So yeah, I see that end where it's going to change everything. Something I talked to you offline too. I want to mention a couple ideas I have for projects, since you mentor some startups and stuff. Something that I've been kicking around for a while, but I'll mention that off. It changes everything. And once you look through it, you'll never be able to go back. One last question I have for you would be, for anyone who's afraid that it's too late to buy into Bitcoin, what would you say to them?
This is around for the rest of your life.
It
doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter, if you're listening to this and you're 75, this is around for the rest of your life and your family's life. But if you're 21, this is it. This is going to become your monetary base. This is going to become the system. And
what about all the people that say, well, Bitcoin's 38,000, like I can't buy one.
Right.
Like, how do you relate to them that it's worth it?
If you can get comfortable coming to the knowledge that anywhere within the next 8 to 15 years, against the US dollar, one Bitcoin will cross 1 million. Then it doesn't matter whether you're buying at 38,000 or 40,000 or 36,000. It doesn't. It doesn't matter if you bought at 4,000 or 34,000. It really doesn't. This thing's going to 1 million. Start stacking your sats. Start, putting something in place. And one thing I want people to understand is, like, we all say, do your own research. Well, you're doing some. If you're listening to this podcast, this is doing your own research. Well done. Thank you for being here. This is a huge first step. Many people were like, I don't have the time to read a book. Okay, don't read a book. Just keep listening to more podcasts or listen to an audio book. Start seeking them out. And a lot of people are like, well, I don't have the motivation to do this. I can't be can't be asked to look into this. It seems like a lot of work, and it's a long road ahead. And yes, it is, but it's addictive learning. It's learning that lights you on fire because it's so intellectually stimulating. And if you're not a finance guy, you're not a finance guy, but you'll get lit up maybe by the tech aspect or the social aspect or the psychological or philosophical aspect. It touches every part of society. So there's going to be something there that you just grab onto. Some people grab onto like this religious, like kind of concept behind it. Other people, they just go running straight at it because maybe they're just they just want more freedom, and they feel stifled in the country that they're living in, and they want financial freedom. Who doesn't? So there will be some aspect of this thing which we might not have even discussed today that you will find from a different guest on a different podcast, and learning from other people that have already trodden this path. You'll find there are very few charlatans here, like the real Bitcoin maximalists. Some fall off the pedestal, of course, but many of the people I've interviewed, over 110 people now for my podcast, I find them very, very measured, very focused, big thinkers, deep thinkers, very intelligent, intellectually curious. And intelligence is a bit of there's a stigma around that word. We just kind of, many of us are taught to believe we're not intelligent. That is another, you and I have had a chat about the education system. You know how that works. You're basically taught to be told that you're not intelligent. And that's why you get the marks that even if you're a straight A student, you end up having a breakdown when you realize, oh, holy shit. Like, that doesn't mean anything. No.
It was all for naught.
Yeah. So for those that are coming in, just, ask what is money and start looking around. There's so many more resources around these days. And you'll find something in class of 2020. They picked it up so damn quickly. I can't imagine what's going to happen in 2021 when we have this number go up, when we have these huge price spikes. That's going to bring people in their droves, and then they have all of these podcasts at their fingertips, and they have all of these audio books or hardcover books, paperback books or articles, Medium. It's all there. The memes, the videos, the documentaries, it's the artwork that's appearing. This is, as Stacey Herbert calls it, Renaissance 2.0, and it's happening. It's decentralized. It's not happening in Venice, like one tiny little Italian town. It's decentralized on the internet, real time for everyone. And again, we're redefining our species evolution. And it's how can you not be lit up by that? Right.
Well, like you said, I mean, it's like, for anyone that, if you're not a finance person, if you're not a tech person, there's an angle here that opens you up. And, like, I'm a film person and I'm a big thinker, and, I own a couple companies and stuff like that. So I like to think of big solutions. But, really, I'm a film person. I'm a filmmaker. That's what I like to do. That's what I like to be involved in. And here I am last Friday. I was laughing to myself. I was on YouTube, like on my Apple TV. So like my, big screen, like home theater where I watch movies and everything. But I'm sitting there searching YouTube, and I'm listening to finance lectures from like professors, like just random economics professor lectures about the subjects that I'm interested in. And I was like, how, like, this is like 12 o'clock on a Friday, and I'm sitting here with a beer listening to econ lectures. Like, I would have never pictured this. And even like when I talk about it to my family, they're like, wow, you're like fluent in these different things. yeah, I would encourage people, like you said, to do your research, and there are so many podcasts out there that I can't list them all, that have brought me to this level of knowledge, and I'm hoping that I can keep learning more. But Daniel, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it. You can check out his One Spittin' podcast everywhere the podcasts are found. And yeah, Daniel, I appreciate it. Thank you so much for coming on.
Pleasure to be here, man. And I meant Florence, not Venice, for the Renaissance rant. So
yeah, no, that's okay. With all the things, it's all right to miss one.
I hope anyone listening has had fun listening to this and has filled in a few of the blanks. But there's so much more you can learn. And just remember, it's you don't need motivation to kickstart action. People get that back to front. Action breeds motivation. And so just listening to this podcast is the first action that you've taken. Maybe it's the 10th, but keep doing that, because that is a positive reinforcing feedback loop. So action, take action, that breeds motivation. So your next action is order a hardware wallet or set up a node, whatever that is. Just order that. And then that flywheel is in motion. So that's my parting comment. Thanks for being here, and thanks for doing this, Corey. I really look forward to watching this podcast take its course, and of course your documentary. So really looking forward to that, man.
Yeah, we'll talk about that more too. Yeah. All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks again to Daniel for joining the show today, and also his daughter Lauren for her great question. I hope you were able to learn something today and enjoyed the show, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.